Spending 2 full days walking through a city with nothing but a camera is a meditative, challenging, and incredibly rewarding experience. Every corner offers a new story, and every fleeting moment holds the potential for an unforgettable photograph. On this particular adventure, I decided to test Hasselblad's X2DII medium format camera along with the 35 to 100mm XCD zoom lens. While it isn't exactly a small, subtle choice for street work, its image quality, dynamic range, and color depth promise to bring something special to the streets of London. What follows is a reflection on those 48 hours: how the city looked through the viewfinder, how the camera responded to different environments, and how every scene, whether planned or stumbled upon, became part of a larger photographic journey. Setting out, the barber's window. The adventure began with a classic urban scene, a barbershop window. Barbershops have long fascinated photographers. They're vibrant, full of activity, and framed with mirrors and lights that create a rich layering of reflections. Shooting through glass always poses challenges. Reflections can distract from the subject, but with careful positioning they can also be used to enhance the image. Without a circular polarizing filter, the trick was to align the reflections so they didn't overpower the barber himself. The result was a picture layered with light and movement, capturing the spirit of the shop and the city around it. A quick glance behind me offered something completely different, a skyline view where moody clouds hovered over a blend of old and new buildings. It was a reminder of a rule I always follow: don't forget to look behind you. Some of the best shots appear in the least expected direction. Playing with depth and color soon after, I came across a composition of crates and flowers. By setting the focus point directly on the flowers at f4, the foreground was thrown out of focus, isolating the subject while still suggesting a sense of environment. It was here that the Hasselblad 16-bit color depth truly revealed itself. The tones were lush, the transitions between shadows and highlights felt painterly, and the overall image had a richness that's often difficult to achieve straight out of camera. An old phone box at Spitalfields Market provided another opportunity, increasing the ISO to 1600 while using the camera's arbitrary focus tracking allowed me to capture a passerby stepping into the frame. That fleeting human presence added life and narrative to an otherwise static scene. A lens with reach 35 to 100mm XCD lens was my chosen glass for this journey. Admittedly, it's not the most discreet piece of equipment for street photography: large, heavy, and not something that lets you blend easily into a crowd. Yet its sharpness was breathtaking, and the flexibility of moving between moderate wide and short telephoto focal lengths opened up a wealth of creative opportunities. For instance, at a full 100mm, I captured an elderly man reclining on a deck chair. The compression at this focal length isolated him beautifully, while maintaining the detail of his surroundings. Even at f4.5, the sharpness across the frame was striking. A challenge at Bank. I set myself a mini photo challenge at Bank, one of London's busiest districts. The idea was simple: within a 50-meter radius, experiment with different focal lengths and compositions to see what unique images I could create. The first composition used 45mm. I positioned myself below a statue, aligning a lamppost with the sky while waiting for a flag to catch the wind. With a moody sky as backdrop, the elements aligned into a photograph that balanced history and atmosphere. Shooting at f11 allowed me to keep everything from foreground to background tack sharp. The second composition pushed the lens to 100mm. A lamppost stood against a backdrop of modern skyscrapers illuminated like jewels beneath the gray clouds. Rather than focusing on the lamppost, I shifted the focus onto the buildings themselves. Their glowing presence made the photo come alive. While I initially considered converting the image to black and white, I ultimately preferred keeping it in color but desaturating slightly, adding contrast to enhance the mood. Experimenting with motion and blur. One of the joys of working with this camera was exploring its newly introduced in-body image stabilization. The 10-stop, 5-axis IBIS system provided creative freedom that simply isn't available on many medium-format systems. Near Liverpool Street, I shot at 1/6 of a second to capture the blur of a man walking through an architectural space. The slow shutter introduced motion into an otherwise static composition, creating a sense of movement that reflected the bustling pace of the city. Later, I pushed things further. At 1.3 seconds handheld, The stabilization system kept stationary objects razor-sharp while pedestrians blurred beautifully. This interplay of stillness and movement brought a painterly quality to the scene, and the fact that it was possible handheld made it even more exciting. Day 2. Shifting weather and fresh ice. Second day brought the kind of unpredictable British weather that keeps photographers on their toes. Sunshine followed by rain, gusts of wind followed by still moments. But this unpredictability also created variety in the images. One highlight was shooting through another telephone box, where reflections played into the composition in unexpected ways. Sometimes serendipity creates better outcomes than planning. Another memorable frame came when a woman in a summer hat appeared, framed neatly at 100 millimeters. She seemed almost to pose for the photograph, adding elegance and narrative to the shot. Autofocus and fleeting moments. Street photography thrives on spontaneity, and autofocus is often the difference between capturing a decisive moment and missing it. Hasselblad's arbitrary focus tracking impressed me here. It was able to lock onto moving subjects and track them seamlessly, even through obstacles like water fountains. For example, photographing a mother and daughter playing near a fountain could have been a nightmare for autofocus systems, yet the X2DII maintained focus despite the water spray. Later, tracking pedestrians and even fast-moving pigeons felt fluid and reliable. For a system historically known more for studio work, this was a remarkable shift. People, simplicity, and color through the today's. I encountered countless human stories. A street artist resting on the south bank caught my eye. Photographing her from above emphasized her tattoo and the curve of her back, creating a portrait that was candid yet composed. One of my favorite shots emerged from a simple composition, a staircase with complementary colors rendered beautifully by the lens. Sometimes minimalism can be the most powerful statement, and the Hasselblad's color science translated the subtle tones into something special. Long exposure creativity. With a 10-stop and defilter, I set up a long exposure of 25 seconds at f/16. Using a 2-second timer to avoid camera shake, I embraced the slower process. The long exposure smoothed movement, transformed clouds into streaks, and turned a busy city scene into something almost timeless. Converting the result to black and white amplified its sense of permanence and abstraction, stripping away distraction to leave only form and tone. HDR and image processing. Another standout feature of the camera was its ability to shoot in HDR using the high file format. Comparing identical exposures, one with HDR enabled and one without, revealed just how much more detail could be retained in highlights and shadows. On HDR-capable displays like the camera's own rear screen, modern Macs, or iPads, the difference was striking. The highlights carried subtle gradations that standard images simply couldn't hold. The Focus Mobile 2 app made the process seamless, allowing adjustments and exports directly to high-resolution JPGs without reliance on third-party editors like Lightroom. For photographers who prefer a streamlined workflow, this integration felt liberating. Final reflections. After 2 full days of wandering through London streets, I felt I had not just tested a camera, but experienced the city through a new lens, literally and figuratively. The Hasselblad X2DII, paired with the 35-100mm XCD lens, proved to be both a challenge and a revelation for street photography. Its size and presence were far from discreet, but the reward lay in the extraordinary sharpness, rich color depth, and stabilization that opened up new creative doors. From fleeting portraits of strangers to long exposures that blurred time, from moody skylines to playful reflections, the camera delivered at every stage. Street photography is often about improvisation, reacting to what unfolds in front of you. This 48-hour journey reminded me that while gear doesn't make the photographer, the right tools can expand what's possible. With the X2DII, fleeting city moments were transformed into images that carried depth, tone, and clarity, telling stories that will linger long after the shutter closed. As I wrapped up, I felt grateful not only for the images captured but also for the act of wandering itself. Street photography is about presence, being in the moment, noticing the noticed, and appreciating the rhythm of a city. And with the Hasselblad by my side, those 48 hours became a journey of both art and observation, one frame at a time.